All right, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise the awareness of trauma and to support and inspire new trauma therapists just starting out on the trauma-informed journey. I do that with my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0, my online courses and workshops, and the Trauma Therapist newsletter. If you're a therapist of any kind and you work with individuals who've been impacted by trauma, I invite you to head on over to my website at thetraumatherapistproject.com. That's thetraumatherapistproject.com. All right, let's get started. All right, Debra, are you ready to go? Are you ready to go?
I think so, yes.
Okay. All right, so we are recording. All right, so 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. Very excited, excuse me, to have as my guest today, Debra Clydesdale. Debra, welcome.
Hello, I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. So Debra integrates physical medicine applications, including modalities, bodywork, movement, and touch into her somatic experiencing practice, specializing in early life trauma resolution, head injuries, medical trauma, and chronic trauma patterns. Debra has over 25 years of somatic experience practice and is integrated with many other treatments. She's currently on faculty at Somatic Experiencing International and has assisted Peter Levine in post-advanced trainings. She's also done consultations with many different types of providers, from medical doctors to psychoanalysts, MFTs, counselors to PTs and teachers, to name a few. Debra has completed certification training in Acupuncture and Oriental medicine, Somatic Experiencing, Hellerwork, Acupuncture, Detoxification, and addiction. And I am so thrilled to have her on this podcast. Welcome.
Yes.
So look, first of all, before we even get going here, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I was born in Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania, and I traveled a lot during my early years, and I have landed in Los Angeles, and now I live in LA and with my husband, and it's the longest I've ever lived in one place.
Awesome. I was just in LA visiting my sister. Beautiful there. All right, let's go. So look, how the heck did you get into this field?
Yes. So it is an interesting story. So I came in this field from my own pattern. I have an electrical engineering degree, and my senior year of college, I was going on one of my job offers, and I was about to get on a plane to come to California to interview with a company, and I had a really bad car accident that was so bad that I had a traumatic brain injury. It was the 5th of 5 traumatic brain injuries that I've had over my life. And so in that last year of school, when I came back from the interview, I couldn't think. I had to drop my classes. I had to change. I had a job offer to go work on the computers for the space shuttle, and I could not take it because I couldn't concentrate. No. So I ended up taking not as a hard a job, and traveling around a lot. I was on a program and I was trained, and I ended up in New York City. And I realized I just couldn't keep this up anymore. And so I left the engineering field, and I was waitressing for a living because it was the only thing I could do with my nervous system. I could remember to write down what I heard and put it on the piece of paper, and that wasn't stressful for me. Remembering and all that other stuff was just taking such a toll on my system. And so one of the waitresses that I was waitressing with started to tell me about Hellerwork, Joseph Heller. And at that point in time, I was sort of managing all of the unresolved trauma through exercise, diet. I was very regimented in the way that I did. My life had gotten pretty small, and I went to do Hellerwork school. And in Hellerwork, it sort of opened everything up again. So like I went to Hellerwork because it was like, oh, I'll have a bit of a better body. I was exercising, I was teaching aerobics, I was doing all of those things, and it turned it up to sort of open up Pandora's box. And in that, I did a lot of different trainings. I looked at Feldenkrais and Qigong and all of that. And I was doing the Hakomi training and I was getting more and more disorganized. And someone said, you need to go meet Peter Levine. And I was like, okay, I'll
How
go
long
meet
ago
Peter
was
Levine.
this, Debra?
That was in the 90s, the 1990s. It was the late 80s. I had gotten into this before a lot of other people, you know, way back in the mid 80s. Because I was just searching for something different. I didn't want to use medications.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let me,
And then,
if I may just interrupt for a second. So how old were
yeah,
you at this time?
I was in my head injury was when I was 21 years old.
Okay.
And it was about 27, 28, 29 when I ended up being in New York and finding and waitressing and then starting Hellerwork school.
Now, when you said you had a traumatic brain injury as a result of this car accident,
Yeah.
did you experience what happened to you as trauma, or was it your head was, you had a traumatic brain injury? Were they one and the same thing to you?
So what happened to me is I couldn't remember anything anymore. I couldn't think. It was very easy for me before to just sit down and think through a problem. I couldn't conceptualize anymore. I had to be around people. So I ended up going sort of hanging out in the bars a lot more than I ever had before. And there was so much shame because here I had to drop classes my senior year of school.
Why did you have to be around people?
That's in unresolved trauma, there's something called ventral regulation. And so if I was by myself, I didn't feel safe. But if I was around others, I at least felt safe. I had somebody to ping off of. So that was one of the biggest things, that I couldn't sit by myself. I had to keep finding people to be with during that last year of school.
So you said you found Hellerwork, among other things. How did things evolve from there?
Yeah. So really, I did the Hellerwork training. It was wonderful. I did some zero balancing, craniosacral work. And the craniosacral work was a little bit too expanding for my system. I need things that were trying to keep it more narrow. And so that's when I went to Hakomi therapy. And I really liked it, but somehow with the exercises at that time, they didn't have trauma in their curriculum at that moment. They were the ones that said, you need to go meet Peter Levine. And so when I did that, there was only one SE practitioner in New York at that time. There are thousands right now. And so I went to get some sessions, and I went to Peter's house in Lyons because he lived next to my parents. And from that work, and I started reading Peter's book, and there was one sentence in the book that said, you know, trauma is not a life sentence. And it said, all of these are normal symptoms. And I almost brings tears to my eyes right now.
Talking about Waking the Tiger?
Yeah, it was in Waking the Tiger. And it was like, oh my gosh, I can get through this. Maybe I can heal this. And that was it. And I did a lot of SE sessions, and my system completely changed. I used to be highly anxious, unable to sit down for much exercise. You know, I call myself a filly. And now I have just so much regulation, and that isn't there anymore.
So briefly, what specifically helped you with SE?
It was the primary concepts of SE are slowing things down, taking small bits at a time and regulating with another regulated nervous system. Often, like, that's what I do in my practice right now. And so I couldn't meditate, I couldn't sit still, but I could sit down across from someone else and go, oh, wait a minute, I can pause for a moment. And then I can notice something different. Oh, wait, I notice I'm a little bit more landed on the ground. And what we do is we take these really small bits of things and we grow the capacity and the resiliency in the person's nervous system, in my nervous system. So it was slowly over time.
Can you give us an example of that? Because I love the way you phrase that.
An example of me, it's interesting to think of my process and then go to with one of my clients, which it was so I'll sort of go with my car accident. One of the pieces that came up is when I would think about the car accident, I would freeze. And it would be like the person would say to me, all right, so notice that. And as you notice that, your hands are in this right now. Can you just notice your hands for this moment? All right, I'm going to notice my hands. And then, all right, I can feel myself settling, like I'm getting heavier on the chair right now. I'm taking a breath. So that was a small cycle of into the charge, and then sympathetic charge, and then to the parasympathetic down regulation. Ah, wait. After the breath, I can notice more of the room around me in this moment. Yeah, I feel less of that charge of the accident right now. And so that's a very small, what we would call a small pendulation. We would go back and forth between the two. And now I'm yawning and I'm settling. I'm burping a little bit, so that parasympathetic system is much more engaged and it has grown in its capacity. Is that enough?
So it is. I appreciate that. So you're bringing awareness to these moments that oftentimes we just let go by us, right? We're not even aware of what the hell's going on with us.
Right.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Now, okay, so you began to have this experience, and what did you notice as you were going through this training, this experience?
Well, my digestion changed. Things changed. I got less anxious and less anxious over time, more able to mobilize. And then it sort of hit a peak. And then I didn't have to use movement in order to regulate myself. I was more regulated just being present. My memory has come back significantly. I've never been measured. That's one of the things that I wish I would have done to see the difference when I did have that to now. But my memory, my cognition, my clarity, it took me, I started the SE training in the late 90s with one of the first trainings in New York. And then I assisted, and then I took a break because it was too much for my system. And then I kept working on my system. And then 20 years later, now I'm on faculty. So I would not have been able to be on faculty when I started. I wasn't regulated enough to do that. So it's just the capacity to be present, the capacity to remember. Another thing that is really here is in the mirroring back and forth in the field between two people. When I first started, like I could feel everything in the room around me. I could feel in the resonance. I was quite responsive to what was happening. And I would have a strong response to it. A lot of students in the training, we see that.
For example, what?
So for example, if somebody got angry, somebody say they got angry, then I would feel in my body a constriction, and it might be where they feel angry, and I would have a really large sympathetic response when that happened. All right. And then what I would have to do after a session is I would have to take a walk. I would need to be able to, I would have to discharge all of that. Now, when someone has a large responsive charge, I feel it, but I don't have any of that response. And it helps them be able to hold whatever is there without a judge so that they can be able to move through it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah.
It seems to be a huge component of being an effective, a present therapist.
I truly believe, this is where I come from, that the more you work on your own system, the more it adds to the patient experience. And what I would also say is the more it makes the experience easier for you as a practitioner, so that you're not managing your own energy and experience and responses while you're with another client. You can be more present with them. And so it is both helpful as a practitioner, but it also makes your life a lot easier. It's one of the secondary trauma that they talk about for people that work with traumatized individuals. I don't walk home with much. There isn't much of that secondary trauma from working in this way.
So as you were going through your own therapy and healing, Debra, at what point did you say, you know what, I want to be a therapist. I want to work with people in this capacity? How did that come about?
Well, when I went to Hellerwork school, so that was back in the early 80s. And so when I went to Hellerwork school, one of the things was, Hellerwork is based on the Rolfing series. And so it's about producing change. And Joseph Heller brought in the emotional dialogue and movement exercises as a part of that. And so that was wanting to help others. And so, I had opened up my system, and I started to do it at that point. I went through that, and then what ended up happening is I was so open, I was having a hard time doing that work. And so then coming and doing the somatic work, and with the influence of somatic experiencing, I went back and forth where I would do more hands-on work that was going to change someone's posture or change something, but less and less over time, because I got more skilled at being able to offer this work in a way that allows people to discover that for themselves. And that's what I wanted to do for people, was help people discover what I had discovered in myself.
Yeah, I mean, I can sense that, and I can, in a sense, you're the perfect trainer, having gone through what you went through. Let me ask you something, Debra. When you did, you said that was the first of 5 traumatic brain injuries you had?
First of 5.
I've got to ask, what happened? How was the other one?
I was just klutzy. Is that what you're?
I don't know. Or you have a secret rugby thing, or what?
I have, we come to know that adverse childhood experiences influence things. So when I was born to regulated parents, but I almost died when I was born. And so I had to be intubated. So I had a sort of a hyper-vigilant nervous system. And so I was a bit of a daredevil. When I was a kid, I hid on top of a water heater when we were playing hide and go seek, and then I fell off the water heater.
Oh.
Now, I was playing games with my sister and I wanted to get it, and we were playing with pots and pans, and she took one of the pots and pans and hit me over the head. Then when I was in my teens, I was riding my mother was pretty overprotective of us. And so when my parents were away, I borrowed the banana bike that I wasn't allowed to ride. And we went down the hill and we went crazy driving. And then I went head over heels and hid my head. And then we fixed me up, mercurochromed me, put all the bruises, changed everything. And then I went on a hayride that night and I blacked out in the hayride and fell off the hayride and hit my head again. So, it was the head injuries came from that flight response, that going kind of a thing. And that was my history of my brain injuries. So I usually just sort of picked myself up, patched it up and went on, but the toll built in my life until the last one. And then I actually had to do the deep work underneath.
Mm-hmm. So for those listeners out there who are wondering about somatic experiencing, we talk a lot about it on this podcast. I mean, Somatic Experiencing, International is a major sponsor of this podcast. I wanted you on here as part of that. And we really honor their work, appreciate their work, and do what I can to promote their work. But for people listening, when they want to know what modality to focus on, to try, what do you say to them?
Well, it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting question. I'm going to name my personal practice sort of evolved over these 20 years. I saw a lot of people that had been through talk therapy and said there is something in the body that has not been gotten to. And so I want to do this work. And so that is one thing, is that we, with the somatic work, I was reading in Trauma and Memory, one of the book, it's housed in the incompleted responses in the body. So often that's the work that does some of this completion of the unresolved responses that have been there. If you want to do this work, many people, you have to be ready to glance at what is underneath everything. You have to be ready to at least take a side look at it. We do the work in a very, very titrated way so that we're not reenacting, we're not reliving. We're taking small elements so you can go back in present moment experience and have a very different experience that then can affect your brain. And it can change the memories, and it can actually resolve the unresolved traumatic experience.
So can you give us an example of what titration might look like or would look like?
Titration might look like, so it could be, someone comes in and they'll be like, so what was working this week? Oh, you know what? It was, I don't think anything was working. It's been such a hard week. I really had a hard time with my brother. He called and we had a really bad conversation, and titration would be, could we pause right here? I really want to hear you. Yeah, that's a lot. And as you speak about that, do you notice your feet on the floor? Can you sense your seat? Or do you sense anything in the room around you? So we don't go too far into the story, because that takes us up into cognition. And what we want to do is go into sympathetic arousal and then down into parasympathetic. We want to sense things that are inside and then sense things that are external to us. We want to have this rhythm of in and out. So titration is taking just a small bit. It could also be, remember when we were talking about my hands were on the steering wheel. It could be, all right, so as I'm noticing this, I'm going to notice my hands and I'm going to just take them a little bit. I'm going to do it bigger than I would there, but I'm going to take them very, very slightly, contract them and release them, and contract them and release them. And as I contract them and release them, my shoulders release. And now I'm going to pause. I'm not going to do more of that. I'm going to follow what's letting down. My shoulders are letting down. I'm burping again. I can feel settled, and we'll really take all the time we need to let that parasympathetic response emerge in the body.
Appreciate that. So I had asked you about, thoughts on suggesting or offering guidance for what people might want to, modalities people might want to look into. And, you were saying, well, when I'm talking about somatic experiencing, I'm saying X, Y, and Z, but let's continue on with that. How do people decide about different modalities? Because there are so many. I mean, when I was reading your bio, you've gone through like a zillion.
I have done so much. I keep doing, it's interesting for me. I keep doing other things, and then I come back to somatic experiencing. Because I feel like it's the foundation of a completion response. So, and I have a really strong feeling, because in the somatic work, what ends up happening is there will be spontaneous movements that start to emerge, and then there'll be a cycle of that, and then someone will settle. Whereas you could do that by a movement practice. Like you could do it, and it's the difference between using an active process versus how things emerge naturally and then move into a completion. So, there's so much. I guess maybe what we might want to do is, what modalities were you thinking of? Because I would say is, like any of the modalities, it's about getting to where you want to be. And where I am or what I hope for the people that I work with, is that they can really be present in their system, and they can feel better than they've ever felt before, or even imagine that they could feel. It's not only about symptoms being gone, feeling nothing, like, oh, that doesn't bother me anymore. There's this improvement in health and vitality that comes with the somatic experiencing work. In fact, in the faculty forum, we were talking about this before, that I think is different than a lot of the other modalities that are out there. When you really truly complete the completion responses and reconsolidate memory and change things, then we get this improvement in health and vitality and aliveness that is there. So so I guess that's my answer, and I'll let you ask a couple questions to guide me.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting answer. So in the course of treatment, and with the realization that everyone's different, but in the course of treatment, when you're working with as a somatic experiencing practitioner, is there naturally just a series of these pendulations that you encounter?
Yeah, well, there's sort of three phases of the work. a lot of times in one of the phases is that those pendulations aren't happening, and we have to start to create an ability to sense self, an ability to be able to track things. Then in the second phase, we're in an expression of something, and it would be like, oh, wait, and then we're actively guiding, we're using the cognition to create a different state. For example, it's like, all right, so I'm noticing that my shoulders are tight. All right, my shoulders are lifted right now. And with my shoulders lifted, if I stay here and notice them, nothing much is happening. Nothing much is happening. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my shoulders up a tiny bit and lower them. I'm going to just do a couple of micro movements. Oh, now my breath just relaxed and everything settled. So we had to use more of a cognitive facilitated pendulation. We had to do something to take to another state. When there's this third state, is that happens in the body on its own, that there is this moving between sympathetic arousal and parasympathetic downregulation. Sympathetic arousal, parasympathetic downregulation. Oh, into that dorsal rest and digest and relax. Oh, yeah. All right. Now I'm ready to do the next thing. Mm-hmm. And so, so we're seeing where people are in that progression. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
and like sometimes, like I'm thinking sort of EMDR, like things like that. You know, sometimes those things can be very effective interventions. Pat Ogden's work, all of those, they're very, very effective interventions. And what really jazzes me is to get to that third phase where the body's doing all of this on its own, and there's this vitality and aliveness that arrive.
What do you feel? I mean, I kind of already know the answer. I think the answer to this question, but what do you feel drives you in this work? I mean, you obviously have the experiences you've had that almost naturally seem to propel you. But I mean, obviously you're so passionate about this, but Debra, what gets you going in this?
When I'm working with a person or a group and I am able to support someone else to have this experience for them. There's nothing like that. I am so honored to do this work. When I've assisted trainings, I think it was like 500 many trainings when I applied for faculty. And I love learning about the material, but sitting down with people and being in the field of this process happening is a wonderful, wonderful feeling. And that's what drives me. I love it. I really, really love it.
As we kind of wind down here, what do you feel younger therapists, newer therapists who want to learn about trauma, what are some of the things you feel is required to get into this field, to work with people who've been impacted by trauma?
I would say learn as much as you can and work your process at the same time. I was like a sponge, like you saw my resume, my CV. I just kept taking trainings and then integrating them. And then you land in how you work in a way that works for you and serves others. So both keep learning, keep growing, but also keep working on yourself as a part of that process, because that for me will make your journey an easier one. I mean, I'm 60, I think either 60 or 61 years old. I'm not sure. I don't track that so much, but I plan to work for a really long time. I love the work that I do, and I like how my system feels as I do that. So if that's something that a younger therapist wants, then I would say work on yourself.
Awesome. So I want to ask you to share an early clinical error. What you learned from that?
Yeah. Aligning with, aligning with the urgency of the client. It's like, oh, wait a minute, we have to do this really fast. I have to figure out what I need to do so that you can be better. Oh, wait a minute, I need to do more. And wait, I might need to get another technique to be able to help you. And all of that, aligning with the urgency of the client. If I knew what I knew now, to sense that urgency is their system wanting to heal, and then holding the space for the autonomic nervous system to re-regulate instead of aligning with doing procedure after procedure after procedure with people in order to make them better. I mean, I worked in a workers' comp clinic where I didn't stay there all that long, but people were getting a treatment every day. People aligning with their urgency of what they needed in order to do better. People don't heal that way. Your body needs a way to heal. So be aware of aligning with your urgency and how you're responding in that way. That would be my clinical error. And I did it. I did it a lot.
How did you move out of that? Do you remember? I mean, obviously there wasn't probably one instant, but.
Well, I think it was from my own personal work, because I'm recalling right now one of the instances, and it was one of the instances where I was doing some of the work and I was noticing what was happening inside, and I was sitting there and nothing's happening inside. Can't we do something else? And it would be, no, we're going to give a little bit more time. And then what ended up happening was my head started to move on its own. And it was like, oh my gosh, wait a minute. This is moving. Oh, this feels really, really good. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, and then I had this whole spontaneous cycle happen and I went, oh. And when I see that, when I work with clients now, they're like, oh, I don't have to do all that other stuff. So it takes a certain amount of regulation and resilience in the system to be able to do that. So we help them build that and grow that in their own system. But when that happens, then I can't align with that urgency to do more anymore. It won't get us where we need to go.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. Look, pleasure talking to you. I mean, it's so inspiring to hear you. And I just so appreciate you sharing your own story in this interview. It's really an honor to talk to you.
Well, I'm really honored. This is one of the first interviews I've done. So thank you so much, Guy. It's been a pleasure and a privilege, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you more.
I appreciate that. Well, I'd love to have you back when we can track you down from all your travels and trainings. And I mean that. I'd love to have you back and to continue talking with you.
Oh, all right, Guy.
All right, Debra. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for listening and supporting this podcast. And if you'd like to join the hundreds of other therapists who are each month keeping up to date and informed and inspired about what's going on in the world of trauma, I'd love to invite you to head on over to the Trauma Therapist newsletter. That's the traumatherapistnewsletter.com.